Guys, welcome back to another episode of Bar Shits and Bullshit. I'm your host, Jay Bird, and I'm here with the lovely Lily Lavender. Guys, thank you for bearing with us. We've had some technical difficulties. We had to upgrade some equipment, but hopefully everything will suffice. But today we're going to jump into it with the history of bartending and how far we've fallen. Some different information and different attributes, different roles that bartenders used to play back in the day as to what they're supposed to play today. And we're going to kind of break down a few different points between, what roles are played and what they used to be played back in the day, and the difference between a mixologist and an actual bartender. A lot of, and I mean, you'll agree, Lily Lavender is actually a mixologist. She's actually studied this trade and went to school for it. Whereas I, on the other hand, has always had hands-on experience. So I've learned everything that I know either from other bartenders and tricks or studying in books. But most of my stuff is definitely from a different perspective, from hands-on learning.
So there's a lot of chemistry involved or science involved with making cocktails. There's a reason why you mix some, different types of liquor with a citrus or a juice, but there's usually a reason behind it. And then shaking versus stirring, which is like an old debatable question right there. And then like the different types of glasses that you use for different types of liquor, it's always for a reason, and it's usually the science behind it.
Yeah. So chemistry does play a huge part in mixology. You'll find that if you bartend on a regular basis, you can make some drink with the same ingredients, but the way you present it and the way you push it out it'll actually change the texture or the integrity of the drink. I've noticed that I make certain cocktails like a pomegranate martini. It does require some citrus in it when I send it out, and then I can always tell if somebody's bartending right next to me that they made theirs differently, because mine, because of the citrus and it's shaken, I'll always add a cloudy texture to it.
Yep.
If I know they've either left it out or they didn't shake it when they put it in behind me, I see it all, and I see that all the time, and I can always make that one distinction, that one comparison.
And the reason behind shaking a certain number of times.
Yeah, well, that's important too. Espresso martinis are the world's worst. You got to shake those forever to actually get the extra froth out of it, and that was always important. And I understand, like, being in a hurry, I do it all the time, but it always makes my espresso martinis look really, really weak if I only shake it 5 or 6 times and try to send it out. You got to really put in the work. But some interesting facts that we've been pulling up. We've been working on this one for actually a little while. Some different history points and different things. One of my favorite details is like the history behind the word shot.
Oh yes, that's a funny one.
So the word shot for liquor actually derived around the 1860s and 1920s during the Western Saloon days. And back in those days, you could actually trade a bullet for your shot of whiskey. The weight of the brass was worth your weight. And so it's also where you get the phrase, you're worth your weight in whiskey. So you'd actually be able to trade your bullets to get that extra liquor. But back in those days, if you were a bartender, you weren't only a bartender. You were everybody's therapist, which people still think that they are today. But you were also a dentist, a doctor, an entrepreneur. You kind of had to play the face of many roles there.
A gunslinger.
Yeah, well, and if most of those places, you were the only one allowed to hold a weapon. I don't know.
They would always take all the weapons upon entry.
Yeah, they always hold them. Yeah, they always take them at the door. Yeah, and fights broke loose. There's only one person, and they would actually hang it over the bar to let people know that his was the only one.
Exactly.
So you see all these westerns and these movies where bartenders kind of got slung around a little bit and got bossed around. That didn't happen as often as you think. You actually had to be. And you got to think of it from that perspective. To actually handle a crowd as gruesome as that back in those days, you had to be somewhat mean, and you kind of held all the cards. Like if your survival depended on me and my anesthesia, like you're gonna treat me with respect. And that's something to keep in mind. I mean, when you bartend nowadays, that's just a whole lot of things you don't have to worry about.
No, not anymore, other than the cops showing up or ALE coming in.
Yeah, ALE coming in. And fights breaking loose. Yeah, fights break loose and all that stuff, but now we've got bouncers and security and all that other stuff.
Exactly.
So, but we've had, I mean, we were kind of digging through this. We were digging through the history of cocktails.
Ooh, and then the history behind the word cocktails.
Yeah.
That one's kind of funny because it's, they used to have these cockfights like way back in the 19th century. And so, which they're still around. But the word cocktail came up because they would mix a drink or pour a drink and they would garnish it with one of the feathers from one of the roosters that was in the fight.
And I wonder if it was like the winning cocktail, or I wonder if it was the winning rooster that got you a cocktail, or the losing one.
I know, that's a really good question. That part I do not know. But
Maybe paid extra for the winner.
Up the price of the cocktail.
Up the price, yeah. It was a sneaky way to do it, I'm sure.
And then what's the other one? The drink, the Tom Collins.
Tom Collins, yeah.
Yeah, and so they had practical jokes back in the day, and they would send people on a wild goose chase looking for a made-up person by the name of Tom Collins.
Mm-hmm.
So then they came up with the drink to go along with the practical joke.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, we had the Tom Collins, and anybody from Cherokee usually knows the story behind the Jim Jones. Jim Jones is a cocktail that's supposed to taste like grape Kool-Aid. If you're familiar with it, most people. I made one last week. It's the first one I made in years, and I almost forgot how to make it. I had to put it together and everything. But Jim Jones is a cocktail that used to be popular, and it's popular here because of the story. It was a cocktail made after the infamous cult leader over in South Africa, who had killed all of his followers with poison grape Kool-Aid.
Oh God!
Hence the flavor. But that's also where the phrase "pick your poison" came from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as gruesome and as dark as that sounds, like everything has a history. So
and that drink is pretty darn good, and it'll fuck you up.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty. Yeah, it's different. It's too easy to drink. It's too easy to go down.
It is. It does taste just like grape Kool-Aid when made correctly.
When made correctly, that's the kicker though. It's supposed to taste like grape Kool-Aid, and the recipe that I use has got razzmatazz, Southern Comfort, amaretto, and cranberry juice, and it's got something else in it. Yeah, I really like I said, I made one in 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lot of really random and blue carousel. Yeah, and it's got a lot of random crap that goes into it. And for some odd reason, it just works.
Yeah,
so,
that's pretty neat.
Really, really good cocktail if you can find a bartender that can make it. Generally, in our area, most of them can. It takes them a second because it's not as popular as it used to be. But but people tend to remember that recipe.
They do. So bars have been around forever, like way long ago. But cocktail bars are interesting because those haven't been around forever. Those only came about in the 19th century. But I think the oldest known cocktail bar still exists. And it was founded in 1688, and it's in London, of all places.
1688.
In London. Because the oldest bar is in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And that one's still standing.
That one's still standing, too.
Yeah, we actually look into it. When we actually make it to Ireland, we were planning on playing a visit. They actually have some of the actual wall from the original structure in the first pub that was ever made in Ireland.
Awesome.
But you had found some information about the first cocktail that was ever made.
Yes,
and that's how they came across it.
Oh man, I gotta look for it. Give me a second. In 1806.
1806.
Yeah.
And it was by accident, this was made.
Yeah. So this cocktail appeared in the Balance and Columbian Repository in 1806. And they called it the cocktail, which consisted of spirits, sugar, water, and bitters. That's it. And then, they had the phrase cocktail that originated right before that. and they put it together. So they coined the whole thing to make it really interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty neat. But then you get into the Prohibition era. So the martini, they made that to mask the flavor of bootlegged alcohol.
Right. Which back in those days, if you were drinking martinis, you were established as extinguished.
Yes, you were either rebellion or refined. Yeah.
But you were one of the top notch ones. You wanted your cocktails a specific way. You didn't settle for. And anybody that makes martinis on a regular basis knows that people are really, really picky about certain things. Picky. So the name suits, and I can see where all the history and the bouginess kind of derives from.
But that's where. Because that is one of those cocktails that has so many questions that come with it when somebody orders it, but nobody realizes that.
Well, and nobody really understands the order that it's supposed to come to. And I think you and I both have had this struggle where people order something and they really don't understand what they're ordering.
That's right.
So, like, code names like Straight, and even bartenders that I work with on a regular basis don't quite understand how that works. Like, for me, if you say Straight, it's going to have nothing but alcohol in it, chilled over ice, or chilled with no ice.
Yes. And then you got neat, which is the same damn thing.
You got neat, and then you got one that's dry or extra dry.
Extra dry.
So it's a dry vermouth. You put dry vermouth in it if it asks for dry. Yep. Not a lot, just a splash of dry vermouth, shaking it, put it in there. If it asks for extra dry, you layer the glass with vermouth, spin it, and toss it out. That is an extra dry and dry martini. If you don't want vermouth in it, you ask for it straight.
That's correct.
That's the rule.
And then you got dirty and extra dirty, and it's just the amount of olive juice you put inside.
Yeah, and the garnishes you put in it, and you can add extra olives or extra, and we use blue cheese olives. But there's different locations that have different flavored olives in it, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
All the way around.
And then a funny fact is, because it was so back in the Prohibition era, you were either rebellious or considered
established.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where the term shaken or stirred comes into play. So if you stir it, you were rebellious. If you shake it, you were sophisticated.
Yeah. So you just wanted that little extra effort or a little extra show along the way. And that kind of goes a different way too. Like you can have vodka martinis versus gin martinis. Now gin martinis you always stir, as the vodka you always shake. That was always my go-to.
Oh, and here's a funny fact about gin. I love gin. Don't get me wrong, but gin was created to mask the flavor or mask the smell radiating off a person that's drinking liquor. So you can't smell what liquor they've been drinking if they drink gin.
Oh, nice. Nice. There's nothing but pine needles. That's all it is.
Not all of them have that to make the gin with.
Yeah.
That's just the original dirt way.
Yeah, she loves gin.
I do.
She also likes chewing on trees outside. It's always the greatest.
I'm one of those tree huggers.
Yeah.
Don't let me fool you.
Oh, we met you. But so there's this recipe and these concoctions can go on for days. So kind of really pay attention to detail.
Oh yes.
That's where the devil always sits, and that'll give way to either the best martini they've ever had or the worst. And those minor details actually make a huge difference on that front. But and I was kind of looking a little bit further. So cocktails were made. We established when cocktails were made, but the original bar or the original when beer was actually made, I think was by an accident as well. Pretty much everything great was happening definitely by accident.
Yes, everything.
Kind of like Viagra, like that. Beer was actually made in the process of making bread, and then I think what had happened was during the fermenting process somebody messed up and they put too much or not enough in it.
All that yeast.
Yeah, all that yeast, and I think it just kind of fermented, and then somebody decided to drink the liquid. Or I think, honestly, here's what I think. and this is just my mindset. I think somebody was trying to poison somebody else with bread like that, and ended up getting them.
Think the same thing.
Yeah, and ended up getting them trashed, and then they were like, "Oh crap,
God.
we might be on something."
Yeah, because back in the day, like you couldn't. It was hard to figure out if someone died from being poisoned, or you know.
You wouldn't have been able to tell.
Yeah, you couldn't tell.
But poison would have been a fresh new thing. It's not something that you just come up with.
No.
Like, unless you're eating the wrong berries or whatever, you know? Like, just having poison is not something that you would just know something about. So, adding too much or not enough of one thing could, like, oh, let's see what this does to Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now all of a sudden you got this experimental thing to where you're trying to kill somebody, and then all of a sudden you come up with beer. And like I said, like Viagra. That was supposed to be a heart medication.
Yeah,
that was made over here in North Carolina.
Boy, does it do wonders for your heart.
so I've been told. But yeah, so a little bit here and there, and we were discussing the old fashions, like true old fashioned is the oldest. It's the oldest cocktail, right?
Yes, an old fashioned is, because if you remember from what I said a little bit ago, was one of the oldest cocktails mixed was water, sugar, bitters, that one, and then they came up with the old fashioned.
Yeah. Well, let's go. I kind of want to discuss a little bit further on job details and stuff and everything that we do on a daily basis. Here's how we've fallen on this front. Now, back in the day, bartenders were something that used to be respected. In my head, and the way I look at it.
Yep.
For somebody to take on so many roles and establish so many different criteria. Like, if you wanted to know something about somebody, you befriended a bartender.
Yes.
Like, if you wanted to know something about your area, you befriended a bartender. If you got shot and you needed anesthesia, you befriended a bartender. Like, these are different things that you had to do to survive back in the day.
That's right.
And in a weird way, your local bartender had the keys to the kingdom. And I love westerns. It's one of my those are my favorite movies. But when you depict a bartender and you look at them and how they're always getting disrespected and abused and all that stuff in different locations, it didn't really happen. Those guys were usually huge, masculine, mean-ass men, and they had to be. Like, I mean, granted, the cocktails that they made usually were shot for shot just whiskey or moonshine, depending on who you're getting it from, or liquor that they made out back. Like, sometimes you could get some bootleg booze. Like, even further down history, you see those old 50s clubs, those clubs you see in the 50s with John Dillinger and Babyface Nelson and Pretty Boy Floyd, all famous bank robbers. They always went to these clubs and wanted established cocktails.
Yeah.
They were the same ones that were ordering those martinis that we were talking about.
Oh, yes.
That liquor had to come from somewhere, and those bartenders had to know what they were doing. And you don't mess up cocktails for people like John Dillinger.
No.
It just doesn't happen. So, but that's another thing too, is people like Pretty Boy Floyd used to walk into a room and everybody loved them at clubs and bars. Because they tipped outrageously. But also because everybody knew exactly what they drank and everybody made it correctly. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that, like, you walk into a room, I expect you to know who, because it's John Dillon. Like, back in those days, John Dillon walked into a room, everybody knew who he was. Oh, yeah. Nobody wanted to turn you in to anything. A, because they were afraid of him. And B, they had so much respect for him because he, granted, John Dillon, it's weird to have a favorite bank robber. John Dillinger's definitely one of my favorites. But he had this mindset that, like, if he can control the public, or, like, not control the public, but, like, have enough respect for the outside world that they would respect him back. And they did for a long time. Like, he never did kidnappings because it looked bad. It looked bad to the press. It looked bad in the papers. He didn't want anybody flipping on him for harming another woman or a child, things like that. He had a moral code. Yeah, he had a moral code. You look at, like, his early quotes and stuff. It's actually kind of funny. He would look around. People asked him as a kid what he wanted to do, and he said, I'd look around the kids. He said there was kids that wanted to be firemen. There's kids that wanted to be policemen. He said all I wanted to do was steal your money, and, like, just had that mindset. Man, he wasn't afraid of anybody. and and held respect in the room, you learned really quickly how to make cocktails for somebody like that.
Oh yes.
Because because that could determine whether you got your ass beat or you didn't, or that could determine whether you made $100 at once that night versus nothing at all.
Oh,
and $100 in the 50s, that's $1,000 tip.
Yeah.
To date.
And then there's more about. So this is my huge gripe with how far we've fallen as bartenders or mixologists. Because back in the 19th century, all the cocktails were made with fresh fruit.
Had to.
They had no other option.
There's no process companies.
No.
Yeah.
And nowadays, we've got bartenders that are still making cocktails wrong with juices that are pre-made.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind. As a bartender, you take pride in your work. Because that's you, that's your specialty.
Well, and I think a lot of people has missed the point of this profession. How many bartenders have you had in the last 3 years that come in and say that they're bartenders?
Oh my God, so many.
And have never made a cocktail before.
So many. And there's a difference between being a home bartender and being a bartender as a profession.
Oh, and there's a difference between, and I get where people have got this mindset because we've all done it. We've all taken the time to look at our phones and look up a recipe.
Oh yeah.
Every single bartender out there has done it. Problem is your everyday Joe sees that and they're like, oh, well, bartending's not that hard. If I can do it, and if I can look it up on my phone every time, then it's nothing for me to go in a bar and say that I can just bartend.
But that's not the point. They're giving you a recipe online so you know what to use to make it with. But when they include specific instructions, there's a reason why that drink is made that way with those juices or that fruit.
Well, and that's the difference between a bartender and somebody that tells me that they can bartend. Yeah, everybody on the planet can Google a recipe.
Yes, everybody can make a cocktail.
And we've discussed it at length. There's over 300 cocktails out there, probably more now today.
Yes.
And these recipes are all always changing and evolving, and names change everything. I seen a recipe for a goldfish yesterday. 3 ingredients, man. And that's not an old cocktail. That had to have made maybe in the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
Real easy recipe. It sounded great. I want one. It's just Absolute Citron and peach schnapps and a clementine dropped in it. That's it. Like a slice of clementine. That's it. And that's a freaking goldfish. But you can't walk into this profession thinking that it's an easy job. You can't do it. You got to know these things. You got to know what old fashioned is, or a Negroni, or Sex on the Beach, or even in the Mai Tai drinks.
Or why you don't shake a bourbon cocktail.
Yeah, why you don't shake bourbon, and why specific things are stirred rather than shaken, and why you don't shake soda. Freaking goobers.
And the difference between using soda water and tonic, and why they do that with different liquor.
Yeah, the point of this message is to make people understand that this is a trade, this is a profession.
It is a profession.
There's a reason why people are everybody else's favorite bartender. There's a reason why people seek out specific bartenders. Not everybody can just jump in here and just be like, oh, I'm going to be a great bartender.
And it's not always about their attitude or their demeanor. It's about the cocktails that they make for a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, and this kind of goes out to you young blonde hussies. And
oh man!
Don't stop looking down on barbacks. Stop looking down at that profession.
They are people that help you out tremendously.
Well,
and they're learning.
That's the thing is you want to learn how to be a good bartender. Start from the ground up.
Yes.
That's you don't walk into a kitchen assuming that you're going to be a chef.
Oh heck no.
Or assuming that you're going to be on the line cooking. You start out in dish and work your way up. Barback is no different. You start out barbacking. You pass out beers. You learn your glasses. You learn how not to break your glasses and handle them. And you learn your juices, cocktails, and where things are. And when you walk into a bar and they decide to start training you, you already know where shit's already laid out. You already have a good idea of what they're asking for. If they ask for a bottle right off the bat, you know where to go. So all of a sudden you know what the ingredients are.
Yes.
And where to find them. For all of you that keep looking down on this profession, that's the first step to true bartending.
It is.
And you ladies out there are strong, independent women. I have all the faith in the world in you that you can bar help. I don't care how heavy a case of beer is. You'll be all right. It's not the end of the world.
You've carried a baby before, haven't you?
Some of you.
Or a puppy. For crying out loud. They weigh the same.
Well, and I know y'all been to college, and I know your boyfriend's made you carry a case of beer. You'll be fine. You can stock. You can stock a bar. And we got to get out of this mindset that hard labor is worthless. Like, I've gotten everywhere. Granted, I'm not a success point. I'm not one of those that like is taking over the world. I don't live in $1 million mansion. Yeah. But everything that I've ever had is through hard labor. Yeah, in the last couple of years, granted, like I've been bartending, and some people would disagree with that. It's hard labor, and I ain't gonna lie, on a lot of different fronts, I would agree with them. But I have also earned where I'm at through. I was I did do bar help, and I was a bar back. I was a bouncer. I did cook in the kitchen,
and you served,
and I've served, and all of those things have helped me be what kind of bartender I am today. And I'm very, very in particular, and I'm very, very nitpicky. But, and at the same time, most people enjoy, I would like to think that most people enjoy working on me because of my work ethic. And how I talk to people and how I respond to certain situations. This is all stuff that I didn't just learn overnight. No. Or in a week. No. This is years and years and years of training. You've been bartending for 25 years. For 25 years. There's a reason that people seek you out among other places.
Like, I wasn't given anything.
No.
I wasn't just handed something. Like, I had to work from the ground up. I went to school. I trained. I'm still training. Yeah.
Well, and you actually went to school for bartending.
And I feel that I'm still learning new things about the bartending world, about being a mixologist. There's always something new coming up, just like being a nurse. It's the same thing. Something new is always happening. Some new equipment is coming up. That you just constantly never stop learning. Yeah. So the people that take that for granted because they've already got the title, that's the wrong way to look at it.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing too, is there's too many people going into this profession as a side hustle. To be a nurse or a doctor. Which, granted, my hat's off to you. If you got another career path to chase them, who might have stepped away in your dream here. But for some people, this is a lifestyle choice.
Yeah,
this is a career for some of us.
This is their profession.
And like, I know that some of you guys hate life. Bartending is not meant to be easy. Serving and the service industry is not an easy job.
No.
I don't care what anybody says. And the only ones that bitch about it and say that like that's easy work is people that's never done it before.
That's exactly it.
Like,
or only did it for a summer.
Yeah, or only did it for a summer and it wasn't no big deal. To adhere to somebody and make sure that you can accommodate certain situations is crazy to me. I seen a meme on Facebook not too long ago. Somebody was on a rant like about what serving was like, and it was like, okay, it's like, okay, I just got the first table. Damn, we don't have those ingredients. Damn, we're 86 this meal. Shit, did I forget their water? Oh, damn, I just got triple sat. And it's a train wreck full of information that you have to keep in your head through 8 hours of service. Yeah, and I think the best compliment I've ever gotten, I had, and I was serving that in particular day. I wasn't bartending, and it was a family of four. It was mom and pop, and then a sister and daughter, and the daughter was 21. Like, she had been serving since she was 18, and then she just started bartending. We had a full discussion about it. And granted, I'm working in fine dining right now. I did my spiel. I played around with them. I acknowledged them. I had the utmost respect for the people that treat me with respect, and they were really, really nice people. Got to their bill, and the father of the group, he looked at me and he was like, "Hey, man," he said, "I want to appreciate what you done today, or like acknowledge the work that you done." And I was like, "Oh, I appreciate it." He was like, "My daughter is serving, and you've inspired her to be better at her job." And I was like, "Damn!" I was like, "I appreciate it, thank you." And I was like, "Where do you serve at?" She's like, I serve I just started bartending at a place in South Carolina." And I was like, it's a different world between serving and bartending. And she started cracking up. She's like, yeah, she's like, I can play around and talk shit at a bar.
Oh, yes.
As to where, like, I have to put on a certain face when serving. And that is, you wear many hats and different faces and all this stuff. But for somebody to actually look up to me for what I've done through my actions is a different kind of outlook than, you know, just seeing who I am as a person and acknowledging that. So that was like the biggest compliment that I could ever get.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of perks to bartending and serving, and you never really understand an impact you have on specific customers.
Yeah,
you just never know until they say something to you. But that's why I'm a firm believer in your smile could mean the world to somebody.
Yeah, well, and just acknowledgement. You know, I know, and I've got a lot of bartenders that do it. I've got a lot of servers that do it. They're afraid to acknowledge somebody because they know they've been waiting a waiting a long time on something specific, or you forgot. Just go in there and just be like, listen, I apologize for the inconvenience. Is there anything I can get while you wait? And I'll get to you as soon as I can. Or if people are just sitting at the bar, you just can't get to them. Go say hey. You'll be like, I'll be right with you. I haven't forgot about you. People acknowledge that.
Yes, they do.
You know, like, and you're just human, just like everybody else. So guys, keep all that in mind, and please jump back in. We'll be getting back on track and doing more episodes regularly after to date. Thank you guys so much. Love you.